What's up, people? Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast. Please let us know how the volume is. Griff's put on his coordinator headset. How brilliant! Um, it's funny that Griff's decided to do that now, where there could be audio issues. But I guess that's what the preamble is for. Thank you all for your patience and waiting for us. Thank you for your questions. I've starred them. This is the episode where we're going to review the Seahawks 2024 season, as it says in the title. We're going to have a revisit of our grades. We might admit that we were wrong on occasion. There might be some back patting too, I think, particularly for Griff. And not that I don't enjoy a good back pat, but if my recollection of our preseason record predictions is correct, I think Griff was right and I was wrong. But then also, the eagle-eared. What would be the equivalent of eagle-eyed, but for ears? What animal's really good at hearing?
Bats, right? Aren't bats like don't they use
No.
echolocation because like they can't see?
Well, yeah, but I guess I didn't think of that as hearing. But
Well, um, bat zoologists in the chat. Let us know what is it? Which animal in the animal kingdom has the best ears?
I think you're probably right. It's just very, very stupid of me to not clock that that was
Owls.
via hearing.
Amy says owls. That makes sense. That makes sense for sure. I think I have heard that, but owls have very good eyesight too, right? Moths. Yeah. Emmanuel says moths.
That's a big shout. If that's correct, I'm impressed.
So we got bats, moths, owls. Stay tuned to the end of the show to find out.
Yeah, you won't find out. You might. Griff might change it up for the outro, but we shall see.
No more affirmations.
Well, that's up to you. You know, It is your show.
Are we thoroughly affirmed? You don't want to go too far in the other direction. You got to keep yourself humble.
Right, stay grounded.
Yeah.
Okay.
Matty, how are you? What's up? Matty, thanks for coming on the show.
No problem. Honestly, it's an honor. Slightly nervous.
It's okay. Just we'll get through it together.
Thanks.
We'll virtually and metaphorically hold hands through the whole thing.
That would be nice. I'd enjoy that.
For sure. So how's life over in London?
Cold, dark, overcast.
Sounds a lot like the Pacific Northwest.
Yes. Perhaps that's what drew me to the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah. Spiritually, Seattle and London are share quite a few similarities.
Yeah. I don't know. Right. Should we do this thing?
Oh, we're done preambling?
Yeah, I'm not feeling the preamble. Okay. I don't want to talk about London.
Okay. You don't want to talk about what your favorite phase of British history is?
Nope. Absolutely not.
How much time does like British primary school spend on?
Wow.
Well, hold on. How much time do you guys spend on Roman Britain in particular? Do you guys?
There? Like a chunk in primary school, I think. But that was so long ago, Griff.
Right. It was. I mean, almost 2,000 years ago. Or did you mean when you were in primary school?
I meant when I was in primary school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. In that case, not as long as Romano.
Quite.
Not quite as long as the Romano-British period.
Yeah. But very little on like the, very much history written by the victors and
oh, sure.
Yeah. There's very little knowledge of Britain's.
Oh, Matty paused. I don't know if I paused or if Matty paused. Oh, chat, we are riding solo. Welcome to the Griff Sturgeon show. My takeover is complete. Thank you all for coming. We have much to discuss. I'm starting a cult, and if you'd like to sign up for it, we'll fill out some paperwork. Entry free, $1,000, and then recurring payments of about $50 there from there on after every month until I go to jail for a pyramid scheme. But until then, it's going to be the best cult you've ever heard of. Oh, Maddie's back. Never mind. Guys, forget what I just said.
I definitely didn't hear that, so that's fine. Yeah, I don't know. My USB thing failed. Don't know what that means. Well, it means that I can't use a third monitor. Maybe the third monitor is pushing things too far. Slightly greedy. Unnecessary.
Maybe.
I don't know. Wow. Thank you for the donation, Ben. We'll try and answer that properly in the actual show.
Yes, thank you, Ben.
That's very kind of you, though. Right. Should we do the thing now? Can we do
Hit it,
the
Maddie.
thing? Oh, goodness. Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, where we have a 2024 season review for the Seattle Seahawks. We're going to revisit our off-season predictions. We're going to look at our grades and see how well certain Seahawks players and coaches performed. But before that, Griff, more news as it pertains to the Seahawks' vacant offensive coordinator position.
Before we get there, are you black screened intentionally? Is this a choice, or is this unbeknownst to you?
My camera shows up on
Chat.
my thing.
I can't see you. Chat can't see you.
Really?
Really?
Huh. How about now?
Nope.
1 second. Apologies.
Okay, guys. So back to the Colt thing. The Colt's back on. There will be an onboarding process. We're going to hammer all the never mind. Forget that.
Can you see me now?
Yeah, we can see you.
Right. I think we should restart so that the people who hate the preamble can have a seamless transition.
I think we're good. Let's just roll it through.
Okay.
And we're back. Matty F. Brown Show. Matty, thanks for coming on.
No problem. Smooth as ever. Right. Griff, we don't know who the new Seahawks offensive coordinator is going to be, but there is more news. Klint with a K, Kubiak. I looked up the name origin of his.
Kubiak? Isn't that Polish?
No, not the surname. Klint with a K. I was like, why is that with a K?
Yeah, 3 sons, all named with the letter K. What's going on there?
And what's their middle name? And does that begin with K? And yeah,
Oh, dear.
that would be bad. But no, Klint means it's like a Scandinavian thing, apparently, meaning cliff or rock.
Interesting.
Which is cool, particularly if
That is
Kubiak's
cool.
actually not what you said and it's like a Scandinavian surname, although it doesn't sound like it.
Kubiak sounds very like a Slavic language, right?
Anyway, so Klint Kubiak's got a second interview. Has he lost his job yet? But he was the Saints offensive coordinator in 2024. We've been through his background in the previous episode. Hank Fraley also with a second interview. And finally, since we last recorded that show where we looked at these two guys, we have 2 new names, including Gran Udinski, Griff, who has, since that moment, earned a second interview with the Seahawks. He is born in 1996 or 1997. Wikipedia doesn't know his actual birth year, so you know he's a ghost in a good way. Also means he's quite young, 28 or 29 years old. He was a grad assistant at Baylor, then became a coaching assistant with the Panthers, was assistant to the head coach, special projects with the Vikings in 2022 under Kevin O'Connell. Worked his way up to assistant quarterbacks coach in 2023, and finally this past season served as their assistant offensive coordinator, assistant quarterbacks coach. So This is the first new name we're going to deal with. We also learned about Byron Leftwich getting an interview with the Seahawks. Talk about Leftwich in a second, but what's your take on Gran Udinski?
He sounds like one of those wonderkins, unique personalities, all football all the time. Absolute like work hound, but a really unique perspective. I finally read one of those articles on him, and he definitely does sound like an interesting guy. It definitely sounds like the origins of what a really successful like scheme play caller coach like they all seem to have. Like they all seem to have something similar in their background, and there's probably a lot of guys like that don't always pan out. So maybe there's some survivorship bias there when it comes to like looking at Shanahan, Sean McVay, and their backgrounds and stuff. But well, obviously they also had, knowing people helping them get into the league. I don't know what Udinski's. I don't know if he had any special favors or whatever, but he seems to have earned his way, worked his way.
No, it sounds, he applied for grad school at Baylor, which was, of course, under Matt Rule at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think he got the job at the Panthers after that with Rule, right?
I think so, yeah. I think you're right.
So kind of earned his way there, it seems.
Right. So, I mean, it sounds quite interesting. He seems to kind of, he did his role so well that they kind of made him co-OC, like you talked about, like in like organically. Like it just kind of seemed to be like, well, let's just keep giving him tasks to the point where you have so much input on the game plan.
Again, he got the job with the Vikings after the Rule thing ended in Carolina because their tight ends coach, Brian Angelicio, he recommended him to Kevin O'Connell. So
yeah,
this guy seems pretty capable for a young dude.
For sure. So at minimum, it'd be cool if he could be brought on as a passing game coordinator. But I don't know with titles how that works, because if he's co-OC, is that in writing? Does his pay grade reflect that? I don't know how the contracts work there. I don't know if passing game coordinator would technically be a promotion or not with the way the NFL writes the rules up. So
I guess, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Do you view that as a promotion? Would he be able to be like a position, he was an assistant quarterbacks coach this past year. Mm-hmm. Would he be able to be a quarterbacks coach on top of that? I don't know. Is being a passing game coordinator with, say, then this is just theorizing, but like an O-line coach like Fraley, would that be a promotion from being an assistant offensive coordinator, because you are clearly the architect of a lot of the passing game and you clearly have a lot of input in that respect, and you're also not working under a offense like genius head coach in O'Connell. You're getting purely in the limelight in that respect because your head coach is Mike McDonald and you're quickly rising still. Undecided, right? But There's definitely an argument that it's a promotion, and yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, a second interview suggests mutual interest, no? Definitely. Or he's just trying to get experience of interviewing. There's probably part of that.
Right. And I imagine that and they've kind of reported this, unless he and Leftwich are the other names. It sounds like there are more names they want to interview, and they're only interviewing the guys that are available right now. So maybe giving them second interviews is a way of like finalizing that eval, so that when the next coordinator candidates become available, you can spend all your time with those guys to speed up the process. I'm not sure though.
No, I think there's definitely credence to that. And with the Fraley, of course, they interviewed him in the Detroit bye week that they got for being a very good team in the playoffs, and that kind of worked out timing wise very well. So that's useful. So the Vikings offense. When the Seahawks played the Vikings, we were massively complimentary about this Minnesota attack. I was in awe of the balance that they played with. the amount of like shots Darnold was able to throw into areas where his receivers would go get it, and it was attacking defensive leverage, and they were dressing it up formationally so he wasn't overexposed. Since that point, the Minnesota offense has kind of, I don't think it's been figured out. I just think Darnold has been, I mean, it's a combination of Darnold holding the ball a bit more, Darnold not throwing the check down, the offensive line being kind of targeted and gamed up really well by two teams who'd caused them problems in the first matchups that they had that year. And it's also, they've been playing from behind, which is getting more obvious pass, even though they had a kind of high pass rate. It's never a good thing in the NFL. And so it's kind of all falling apart. But I don't think you should... Well, Griff, what's your read on all that? Are you excited by a potential? Obviously, it wouldn't be the same thing, but a lot of what Darnold does, I think Geno Smith could do, and I think Seattle has receiving talent that it's not an exact match. We've talked about DK Metcalf's limitations, but DK Metcalf's unique skill set that's channeled in a certain way. It's been more positive with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's the fit like if they're gonna?
It's definitely a really good offense, really sound offense. Play action, they've got the full menu open. They got the pocket, the quick setup pocket play action, the boot play action, built off of the wide zone, mid zone stuff. They have the full zone complement, split zone, the strong side and weak side. With pullers, some two-back stuff. And then they also have the Max Pro two-man route combo shot stuff, which would fit Seattle's receivers quite well. In the drop-back game, they're good at working matchups and just letting Addison and Jefferson just win. And they also have a good amount of progression passing, not as much as Seattle did. And I think that's a product of not wanting to put too much on Darnold's shoulders. He can do some of it, especially when the line is protecting him. They didn't have a great line. They had an okay line. Sorry. Translating all of that to Seattle, you'd be reverting to form, your 2023 form with play action, which is getting back to neutral where you were really good, right? And then in the drop back game, it would, at minimum, it would be what you saw in Minnesota, at least in terms of play calling. Would there be more? That would be the question. McDonald wants balance. What does that really mean to McDonald? Can that be, is there a run heavy and pass heavy versions of that?
Has he ever used the term balance?
He said dictate terms.
And
right?
Complementary football, right? Which I feel like, football. I guess that's his equivalent for balance. But I don't know, that's more like a Pete thing, right?
I mean, are they saying the same thing there with different semantics?
I think so.
It's hard to know exactly, but
yeah. So, are you pumped about? I'm quite excited about Udinski. I could definitely talk myself into it. And someone else sounds excited about Udinski.
Yeah, let me.
Is this Brady being needy again?
Yes.
So one thing, Brady didn't seem needy in the regular season. So perhaps the lack of Seahawks football is not there to distract him.
You might be right about that. He, I'm not going to pretend to be able to figure him out. I don't think I'll ever really know what his deal is. So,
and if you can't,
right. Yeah, no, I'm excited. If Udinski ends up being the guy, then it's like, all right, cool. They're going in on the young wonderkind. You know who else had this reputation at the same age?
Sean McVay.
Well, Sean McVay, but also Kellen Moore. And I think Kellen Moore is a good OC. I don't think he's a bad OC. Really? No, he's had good offenses, especially when his team's been healthy. So I think that the track record there, I think both of those outcomes speak well for Udinski, meaning that if he actually gets promoted, then it would be that he truly deserves it. So
Fair enough. It would be quite the risk. Like, again, going with and they said that prior NFL play calling experience wasn't a prerequisite, but that's one thing. Going with a guy who has never called plays and has been in the NFL coaching for 5 years and is young, which that's, let's not get ageist about this, but at the same time, it's a risk. It would be exciting. Like the Ryan Grubb hire was exciting, albeit for different reasons. It'd be a massive statement given the names that Udinski's going up against. So at first, you kind of thought this was maybe to be the pass game coordinator, but with what we said about that maybe being lateral and getting a second interview, and this guy just climbing up the ranks so quickly and being clearly impressive to multiple NFL coaches.
Right. If it ends up being Udinski, then the next hire, the second most important hire, would be O-line coach / run game coordinator.
Right.
And that guy needs to be a dude.
Yeah, for sure.
So hopefully like a vet who doesn't have OC aspirations, guy who's done a lot of it.
Okay, so the other name, Griff, is Byron Leftwich, who, unlike... Are we going with Udinski or Udinski?
I think it's you. I think it's pronounced you. Udinski.
Udinski, thank you. Leftwich is a NFL veteran coordinator. He's with the Arizona Cardinals as an intern, then quarterbacks coach, then interim offensive coordinator, then offensive coordinator from 2019 to 2022. Was also, of course, a NFL quarterback for 9 seasons, 10 seasons, and a Super Bowl champion. Griff, how do you feel about this? Because I think if you went on Twitter and searched Byron Leftwich and filtered it to like 2022 Tampa Bay, he was disliked, and as is the way often with offensive coordinators, became like the scapegoat for a lot of failings, some of which weren't his fault. How do you feel about Byron Leftwich?
Yeah, it did not end well for him in 2022. Coming off of 2021, he was a legitimate head coaching candidate, and there was that report that like he accepted the Jags job, and then something fell through at the last second. I'm not sure.
It didn't help like having to coordinate Tom Brady, right? Like it's such a obviously helped to a point, but when things start going bad, like optics wise, it's like can't be Brady.
So Leftwich isn't a slam dunk in your face. Well, an in your face slam dunk, but I think that there's a lot to like about his offense. There are some flaws with it. I think the main criticisms that crop up are the run game and play action, but I don't really buy those. He does quite a bit of play action.
I love their run game.
Well, so for starters, let's mention that again, with the exception of 2022 when it was awful, they had an elite run game for like 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
So
and he learned under Bruce Arians, who like
duo.
I think that's exciting as well. Like just thinking about the run concepts and then the play action, the play fake game, which comes off that, and how vertical that offense can get.
Right. I agree with you. So he is not the Shanahan branch tree under center mode, but it's still, I mean, honestly, it's starting to mimic the direction McVay's gone, like incidentally. They've kind of converged a little bit, Arians and McVay out of under center, part of that Stafford, but also like the duo run game, wanting to get pocket play action going. So he can coach the protections with it. He can marry the run and pass quite well of under center. I think with Geno, he might be inclined to boot more than he normally would. He didn't have a lot of reason to boot with Carson Palmer and Tom. Maybe he booted a little bit with Jameis. I'm not sure. I think what he's really good at, though, his strength is understanding his receivers and Arians too. But like they really know how to use them, and how much he passes is a direct reflection of what he thinks of his receivers, because he's always had the pocket passer. Even Jameis, even though he turns the ball over a lot, he can handle a lot of volume, like the operational stuff of quarterbacking in the drop back game, right? Pre and post snap. So how much he passes. So like, for instance, they passed more with Jameis than they did with Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer in 2015 he played quarterback as well as you can play it, essentially, give or take some, on the margins, but he was incredible that year, right? But he threw the ball like 53% of the time, and he threw it with Jameis 58% of the time. Like, well, why? Well, look at the receivers. So what that means is he has very clear plans of what he wants to do with each of his skill guys. With JSN, you immediately think of Godwin, you think of Larry Fitzgerald a little bit in the twilight of his career. DK, he'll have no problem getting DK the ball. Even keeping him on the sideline, he can find ways. On the sideline, out on the perimeter. Even if you just stuck him at X on the left side.
Look at Mike Evans' usage.
Right. And he can account for the fact that DK isn't a great jump ball winner. For sure. So he can figure all that out. And you know who else I would be really eager to see what Leftwich would do with is Jake Bobo. And you could even extend that to AJ Barner. He knows how to get an attached Y in the pass game, in the drop back game. And he's very good at finding matchups for slot receivers, Bobo, against particular linebackers and sequencing that against individual players. He has a strong side choice game, which is another really unique thing about him. Very few guys actually have strong side choice. It's all weak side choice. The only strong side choice you see is like Haas Juke, but he runs actual choice and pairs it with like a high-low read thing going on.
So why do you like that?
I just feel like it's so economical. Like, why do teams like weak side choice? It's like, why run quick game when you can run choice kind of thing? Because the timing is so quick, but it's not quick game. It's a little more lucrative. So why? But then why box yourself into doing it on one side? Like McVay and Ben Johnson, they only do it weak side, and Kyle, but they can get the running back involved out of the weak side too, like out of the backfield, and that's a way they can access more volume. Arians can, maybe he could use the running back, but Arians and Leftwich, they're like, well, I can run strong side to either side of the formation. So if I'm in a 2x2 or I motion to a 3x1 and I still want to run choice because I like the matchups, there's a way to do that. So that's what's really good. What I worry about is how would Leftwich handle like a really bad offensive line? And I don't know the answer to that. So that's, for me, that's where it's like John really has to make his hay. If they hire Kubiak or Udinski, I think the floor will be high enough that if John doesn't improve the O-line, they'll be competitive still. But I worry just because like you don't have to have a good O-line to be good at play action. You can just spam it, shrink the game down, just let Geno point and shoot, and you'll be okay. But you'd worry about third downs with them. If Leftwich has a workable O-line, and in my mind, that's like just revert to 2022 form before the tackles fell off a cliff. I would be pretty excited about Leftwich. So,
and as Matthew Conzila points out in the chat, 2022 for Leftwich when they lost their two starting O-line in the offseason to ACL injuries.
Good point. So there's pros and cons. Like, I'm not trying to sell you beach property in Wyoming here, but I'm just saying, like, there's ways it could work, ways it wouldn't work. I think it's cool that they're interviewing him. At the very least, like, get him on staff. Like, let him. If you bring in Fraley and you can't lure Udinski over to be your passing game coordinator, Leftwich and Fraley sounds like a hell of a combo to me. So,
yeah, exciting. And Leftwich will be a guy who, it's pretty sad, he seems to get interviews just for the league to satisfy, like, was it the Patriots interviewed him as for their head coach position, which is just, the Rooney rule in all its flaws and just ridiculous. But hopefully in his sake, he gets this Seahawks OC job, and then in a year he's getting head coaching interviews, like, which are actually genuine.
Right.
Or at least appear genuine from the outside. Anyway, so On Fraley, Griff, I said he's got a second interview. I don't think we don't know that. Because, of course, the Lions are still in the playoffs. They had their first playoff game coming up. But Finn asked in the chat, assuming that the Lions win, do you think the Seahawks will have the patience to wait to conduct an in-person interview with Hank Fraley? We can't possibly know that, but I think McDonald's comments on this implied to me in the in his last media appearances before the offseason that he's willing to wait this out a bit. So I would suggest yes. I think they will try and wait it out. At the same time, if these second interviews went really well and there's a guy they feel great about, maybe they just move on from Fraley. But as Griff said as well, you could be a scenario where maybe he's like a run game coordinator, and that's a bit of a promotion for him. And the way it all shakes out in Detroit means that it works somehow. I don't know. But right. Griff, what's your views on this?
Well, yeah, that's the big risk, right? Because you don't want other guys to get hired while you're waiting for Fraley. If Johnson leaves, is Fraley an in-house candidate? I just assumed that it was Engstrand. But what if that's who Campbell prioritizes? If Fraley gets hired in-house, does Engstrand become legitimately available? The Seahawks interviewed him last year, and maybe they felt it was a little early for Engstrand. I think I heard this might have become public information. I don't know, but it's not like it's that revealing anyway. Engstrand stayed because he was assumed that he would be the heir apparent to Johnson in Detroit, but that could be Fraley now. So, I mean, I would be pretty excited about Engstrand in Seattle as well, but his name hasn't come out.
And that feels indicative of him getting the job when Ben Johnson leaves. But we don't know that, but that would be my read. Okay. Griff, finally, the Seahawks senior director of player personnel, Matt Berry, interviewed for the Tennessee Titans general manager job. He did not make it to the second round of interviews. They since hired Mike Borgonzi, great name, the Chiefs assistant general manager, to be their new GM. Any takes on Matt Berry not getting to the second round of interviews, which we have no knowledge of? It's great the Seahawks still have their senior director of player personnel.
Yeah, I guess so. Continuity, hooray.
Woo. Brilliant. We also have something from Jen here. How are we feeling about Leslie Frazier? Keep or go? This is, of course, referring to Frazier getting rumored talk that he could be the next Dallas Cowboys head coach.
Yeah.
Do you put any stock in those rumors?
He's probably staying, so I don't think we have to really think about it. But
they are interviewing him. Again, I am concerned that would be a Rooney Rule thing, but I would hope not. It seems like Frazier was very helpful for McDonald this year. He's been a successful defensive coordinator, very successful defensive coordinator, got prior head coach experience.
Jerry does seem to value experience quite a bit in his hires.
And a steady pair of hands, right?
Steady pair of hands. That's why he was so reticent to move on from Jason Garrett. Because, I mean, Garrett was okay at certain things, like the managerial aspects of being a head coach who didn't call plays. So I don't know. I mean, Leslie might make sense for them, but I hope it's not just a Rooney Rule. I hope he's being taken seriously because he's a good coach. Mike wanted him in the room for a reason, and he probably did all sorts of things that we don't know about that probably, helped. So I think at one point in the season, Mike mentioned that Leslie was spending a lot of time on the offense, and that might have been the catalyst for cutting bait with Grubb and just realizing it wasn't working out. Maybe I'm totally...
And also the visible change we saw to the offense in approach, but also just looking at the increased run rates at a certain section of the season where that was present. Obviously, it fell away in large parts too, but something was happening behind the scenes, and Frazier being instrumental in that, based off McDonald's comments too, would track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
yeah, it'd be bad for Seattle. At the same time, does McDonald still need someone to see around corners, as he termed it, in his second year? Sure, it'd be helpful, but you'd also like to think that he's learned a lot, and he himself said he's learned a lot. But maybe he's grown into more of a, obviously he's still going to call defensive plays, but more of a coach who's comfortable overseeing things. And he had that comment, didn't he, about putting their coaches in front of the players more, which, kind of suggests, well, I guess it suggests the opposite, but more like there's like a comfortable devolution for him where he can allocate himself a bit differently. So there you go. Right. Do we want to answer the Monjombo question that we have starred in the chat, Griff, or do we want to leave that for later and transition to our season review? I guess we should answer it now.
Yeah, let's answer it now.
What makes an O-line more suited to the gap versus zone running? This is pertinent, Monjombo, as I'm sure you're aware. Maybe your reason partly for asking this, because depending on how late the Seahawks leave this offensive coordinator hire, that then means the draft grades for the offensive line, they could change. The free agent stuff could change. That being said, like how is O-line more suited to the gap versus zone running? Monjombo saying, feels like those terms are thrown out everywhere, but I don't know why personnel would favour one over the other. Also curious for the sake of what Seattle's could be better at, and we will talk offensive line. Well, yeah, when we're grading the 2024 season, we have to talk offensive line and also grading a general manager. But yeah, Griff, I mean, if we start with the basics of that, answering that question, I think with gap, you'd say they tend to be bigger, and with zone, they tend to be a bit lighter and a bit more athletic and more able to move a bit more lateral, and take like a zone track and get out on a track together. Whereas gap, they're more kind of knock guys over, play tighter, displace people immediately. But there's a lot of crossover, right?
Right.
And you could take that more advanced.
Yeah, no. And with how like a lot of the league is doing all of it now, I don't know if it serves you to look for one personnel type. But yeah, the reason why like zone, you typically have lighter guys is because you need to gain ground and win leverage that you don't necessarily have pre-snap on a guy. Whereas with most gap scheme, you're winning on the leverage you've already aligned on most of the time because you're blocking down. But then the one caveat, blocking down to the play side. So like if play side is to your right, you block to your left. That's an oversimplification, but that's often what happens. Whereas zone, if play side is to your right, you're blocking to the right. So zone lends itself toward lighter players because they're typically quicker. So the operative principle there is you need to be quick. So if you're a bigger guy that can do it because you're an elite athlete, then okay, you're not chasing size for the sake of it. It's just that size tends to correlate with certain traits in each direction. But then again, with gap scheme, what about pullers? The better pullers are typically lighter too. If you're 330 and a mauler, you can't pull. Like you don't want to.
Well, and how well you can, but like how wide are you pulling, right? You know,
sure.
Are you running pin pull where sometimes you have to go out quite a way, or he's running like short trap, like remember Mike Upati blocking trap, like he was great at it and he was a big guy, but
he was also good at blocking zone though too, wasn't he?
He was, and I think what this discussion lends itself to is, as Griff's illustrated better than me, but you get in a lot of trouble if you start, I think, overthinking that one, and I think really you just need to look at the overall traits, but yeah, like so many teams run like it's zone with like the almost the constraint of duo, right? Run schemes in the league generally are very similar.
Yeah, they are. It's kind of like that conversation at D-line where, well, is he a fit for this scheme? Is he a fit for that scheme? And my personal like view is like if you're over 300 pounds and you're good at football, you're a fit for any scheme. Maybe you
Yeah.
might lend, maybe you're a little bit better here or there, but like you're either playing one technique, three technique, or four eye, and you got to be able to do a little bit of one gapping and two gapping. And if you can
Yeah,
rush, you
some
can
guys
rush.
are worse at the two gapping or the one gapping, but I think if you look at why, yeah, I don't
Right.
know if it's
So
there.
So then relating that to the O line, it's like if you're worth taking in the first two rounds, even maybe the first three rounds, you're probably good at all of it, and you don't really need to sweat it too much. I think the precise body types are more like certain O line coaches having preferences, but in 2025, again, like Shanny is running everything, McVay is running a little bit of everything. You got to be able to do it all, I think. So it probably doesn't matter too much.
Right. But bigger versus lighter is basically, that's when you see that in like a draft report, that's basically what they're saying. And you can imagine the problems if you're too big or too light.
Yeah. Also, though, the idea that like Matt Hasselbeck said it, he said that zone is perceived, not that he agreed, but zone is perceived as soft, and power is perceived as tough. Like there's never been a good zone team that was soft. Like you're still moving bodies, you're displacing other human beings. You're trying to push them as far as you can. Like it's not finesse. It's not finesse
you're
at all.
washing the heck out of, if you're cutting back, you're washing the heck
Right.
out of the backside, right? Like
Yeah.
on like well blocked zone runs, they're some of the most violent plays in football.
People are getting concussed every successful zone run. Someone's gotten a quote unquote mini concussion, which is a medical diagnosis. Like it's not colloquial, unfortunately, but like that's the reality. Anyway,
brilliant. Okay, thanks for the question. Great as ever,
cool.
Monjombo.
Good
Right,
question.
Griff. Let's revisit 2024 football. So, if we must. So, before we do the grades, what did we predict record wise for the Seahawks, and how did we do? I think you said 10-7.
I said 10-7 and wild card loss, but
you suck. Did I say 9-8?
I think you did.
So we're both like quite close there. I don't know if I said they'd make the playoffs or not. Anyway, as I said, bat-eared listeners would be able to refer to our. Obviously, someone will have receipts. But yeah, we were close, and I guess the way the season panned out for me was there were things to be surprised about and things to not be surprised about.
Mm-hmm.
So a good way of framing that is grades. And it's also a way of getting you guys interested, I guess, and keeping us disciplined. Griff, with grades, let's start with Mike McDonald. So he's the first Seahawks head coach in franchise history to lead a team to 10 wins in his maiden season. Of course, having an extra game now, 17-game seasons, makes that a bit easier. He didn't make the playoffs, but, with all that said, maybe can count himself a bit unlucky. Only the second team in the decade to go 10 wins and miss the playoffs, and also go 4-2 in the division, 7-1 on the road. What would you grade Mike McDonald with all that said?
All right, so I've got two answers because I love to hedge.
What?
I've got a grade.
There's nothing to hedge. It's your grade. What are you hedging?
I don't know. Well, I have a grade for Mike where I'm grading him on a curve, accounting for rookie head coach and all those factors and everything we've talked about. And then I've got one where no mercy, you're just grading him as is, no context, just how did he do? So grading him on a curve, all things considered, B+. Okay. Not all things considered, just how good of a coaching job was it straight up, any given season in a vacuum, blah, blah, blah. How'd you do? B-. So They were 10-7, and he's responsible for both sides of the ball. They missed the playoffs. He inherited a good team, a winning team, a team that we all decided underperformed. They more or less ended in the same place. The NFC West regressed mightily, and they couldn't take advantage of that in the end. They beat the 49ers finally after 2 years of not beating them, but they were a massively regressed team. Again, not making excuses, but for the Niners, that is. But he did not handle the offense well as a head coach, like straight up. Now, grading him on a curve, 10-7. You got to take stock of a winning season. I mean, I did that when Pete Carroll went 9-8 back to back. I'm going to do the same thing for Mike. There were a lot of things working against him. Couldn't bring anyone from his staff with him. He's had no experience with the offensive side of the ball. There was always going to be learning on the job to do. I'm sure this was a huge learning experience for him on the offensive side. I mean, he did not do great with the offense. So that's kind of what's sinking him. Defensively, there were some rocky moments, some stuff where we took, quite a bit of issue with the structure of the defense. But at the same time, like, Schneider kind of screwed him over with the personnel decisions. Like, how was he ever going to run what he did in Baltimore, even close, with Dodson and Baker being his linebackers? Like, that was never going to happen. And
at the same time, McDonald clearly advocated for those players and did coach linebackers at Baltimore. I'm sure he had a heavy input on that.
Sure.
But he got that wrong as well,
Yeah, he did. But the lesson there is, and I kind of pushed back against, we both did, like, he's not a miracle worker, and that's not to be held against him, because nobody is. Like, all the guys in Baltimore.
I've heard of a guy who was apparently a miracle worker.
Yeah, but I don't know if he coached gridiron. He might have been more of.
Oh man, can you imagine?
Yeah.
Wow.
So like Patrick Queen and Geno Stone have their career seasons because they're couched around Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton and Roquan Smith. They didn't have the analogs in Seattle for that. So, like, he wasn't going. None of these guys were going to have their career year without. I mean, maybe Dodson would have been better if Ernest Jones was the Mike week one with him, right? Or Jordan Brooks was the Mike with him. But we didn't get to see that. Sure enough, Dodson goes to Miami. He's playing next to Jordan, and Dolphins fans anyway seem to be satisfied with him. So that's kind of ironic. But anyway, he identified an issue, and he showed that he could adapt in real time over the course of the season and turn the defense around. Now they didn't play the elite offenses very well, but they were still end of the year the 10th ranked defense in EPA. So taking stock of that, B+. But like next year, we're not grading them on a curve, right? It's okay. There's your grace. Now you gotta show like improvement, hopefully on both sides of the ball, and we'll see how that goes. But I think all in all, it was a solid season for him. I don't know, Matty. I spoke enough. How about you? What are your grades?
Okay, so a couple of things. I think I'd give him an A-. I think all of what you said is totally valid. I just add that while he was 100% involved, his words, in the Ryan Grubb decision, that happened so late in the process that was kind of the only option. And there is only so much you can do when your offensive coordinator is struggling and you are a first-time head coach, and I know you're grading on a curve, and I think that's only fair, and we're big fans of context here. But there were signs of like the offense being told to do certain things and changing, and then they regressed in whatever way or reverted in whatever way. I think for me, it's encouraging that he managed to hold it all together during some pretty shaky moments for the team not to fall apart, and there were signs of a culture kind of growing on the team, and he stayed level and balanced and honest and accountable and reflective and all those positive things, along with it being very difficult to succeed like a character like Pete Carroll, and yet the cultural transition seems to have worked good. So I think a pretty impressive first year, and if they'd made the playoffs, you'd I think be saying A plus. He exceeded my expectations by 1 win, but I think the way that the season panned out with the defense sort of having that wobble and then becoming not as good as I think we, if you look at the data and you look at the EPA, there's some like turnovers and some pick sixes that throw it off a bit, and actually the first and second down defense didn't improve as much as you might think initially. And we need to be careful not crowning the defense, and sort of it'll be interesting to rewatch it all and see where they need to further improve. But yeah, I think they hired an interesting guy who seems to be doing a pretty good job. I'm excited for his year 2. There was another point I had on him, but can't remember what it was. So I'm sure that'll come up another time.
It was a great point, though, and we'll look forward to it.
Oh, yeah. It was a banger. Right. Who do you want to grade next? Let's go with John Schneider, Big Dog. The general manager of the Seahawks. Well,
the roster, I think, in the grand calculus stagnated. They got worse on the interior. They improved on paper at tackle. I think Fant was a good move. It just didn't work out. That was good process, bad result. I think bad process on the interior. Christian Haynes was disappointing. I think he screwed up at linebacker. I think he royally screwed up at linebacker and safety outside of Julian Love. But then drafting Byron Murphy, that was a great pick. So he played well. He'll play even better next year. So when you're trying to improve and you yourself use the word stagnation, and then you didn't improve your end of the bargain, as in, then the trade for Ernest Jones too, right? That was a stroke of genius at the 11th hour. That kind of offsets some of his offseason sins, if you will. So I think in the end for him, I kind of give him a C, maybe a C plus, because he didn't improve the team in the aggregate. And I'm not sure he improved it's one thing to remain stagnant, but then have a better cap situation. And I'm not sure they're necessarily more or less cap flexible than they were last year. They kind of stagnated across the board. So a C plus for him.
Yeah, they almost treaded water from a roster perspective. I think also agreed. Now, I don't think we'll grade Byron Murphy because it's too early. But in terms of improving the roster this year, I don't think Schneider did that good a job, and the Ernest Jones trade may have saved his actual job. We'll never know how bad the defense would have remained without that, and it's not all about one player, but at the same time, the linebackers are really hurting the defense, and them deciding to move on and reshaping it really helped, obviously. But his draft in future years, Griff, that could suddenly, Byron Murphy is still a really good player, and we think of him highly. I don't know. I think C's fair. The offensive line, we all thought it would be bad, but I think it was made to look worse by the coordinator. Much worse, actually. That's my kind of take. He also was involved in hiring Ryan Grubb quite heavily, I think. And obviously, McDonald liked it too and was in favour of it and was kept in the loop. But at the same time, Schneider had more time to think of that.
It's easy to play the hindsight game with Damian Lewis, but I understand they would have had to have overpaid. But I really did not like not paying Lewis on account of not wanting to overpay him and then go pay your fourth option and Noah Fant $9.5 million per year. If you're going to overpay, at least pay the proven quantity.
Yeah,
especially
the
at
allocation of their the allocation of resources there was oof.
It was bizarre.
Tough.
It was weird.
Really
I'm not going to
tough.
fault him for Brooks walking out the door because it sounds like that was Brooks not wanting to be part of it anymore. But yeah, the alternative plan wasn't great there.
So really, it would be like I'd be like D or F if the Ernest Jones trade hadn't happened.
Yeah, frankly, he would have sunk the whole picture. The defense was horrible. The defense was trending toward being a bad defense before that trade. So imagine where they'd be if they had probably what would have been the 20th ranked defense and the 18th, 20th ranked offense. They would have won 6-7 games without the Jones trade. And not that Jones himself was a difference, right? But he kind of unlocked other things to let other players flourish too.
For sure. Now, one Schneider signing who did work out, Griff, is Julian Love. So the safety.
Right.
You had been a bit skeptical of Love. I described him as a catch and tackle guy. I think we questioned the idea. Well, I don't know. I thought he was fine, but I think his level of play this year surprised me in that, like, I think it's an important lesson of when a defense is playing badly, a lot of players will look worse than they actually are. Mm-hmm. Just like when a defense is playing better and the structure's more sound and the calls are more dialed in and there's more layers to it, players will look better. And Love's, as we've said in previous episodes, he's a type of player who, if he's asked to do like one or two things quite a lot, I think he starts to get exposed and picked on a bit, or just he's not able to execute at a really high level. But if you allow him to do a lot of different things and you give him lots of different buckets to work in, he's a pretty damn good safety, along with his tackling improving massively this year and him becoming an important cog to the team culture, almost a leader of the defensive backroom and a guy who I think McDonald almost sees as a peer. So, well, that's not the right. He trusts him. He's a trusted leader of the team. So, Griff, this was I mean, you were by the end of the season saying an all-pro type player. I guess my love for my grade for Love would be B+.
Think I mean, I don't know. I feel like he's an A-. I think maybe a high B+ is fair because I still don't think he's particularly great in one-on-one coverage on the slot against tight ends and stuff. But his deep coverage was immaculate with one exception against the Vikings. But then where he really won me over was his quarters coverage genuinely improved, like coming downhill. Like he gave up a lot of completions last year, doing some of the same stuff. And this year he just got better, man. He improved. So I mean,
that Viking game actually had a really good pass breakup doing that.
Yeah. So he came downhill explosively. And then his tackling and pursuit was really impressive. That was something like just truly like wowed us, I think, as we were watching. Like even on some of the bad games, Julian Love would do something we were watching on tape and we're like, wow, that was a play that he just made there. And Leslie Frazier called his shot. He said, this guy's going to be a household name. And I don't know how he only made the Pro Bowl as an alternate, especially with safety play being down around the league this year, at least in terms of recognizable names. How does he get Pro Bowl last year and then not this year? I don't get it, man.
Because he had a primetime pick six against East Coast team.
Yeah, I guess so. I'll never get it. But anyway.
Yeah, Buda Baker should not have made it, in my opinion. But anyway. Okay. Another player who didn't make the Pro Bowl is wide receiver DK Metcalf. Griff, this year for him was not good. He had 15 games and less than 1,000 receiving yards for the first time in his NFL career, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of crazy to say for a player like DK. But, and we'll get on to the offensive coordinator, a lot of that I think is to do with his usage. You can also be you've got to remember, before he hurt his knee or banged up his knee, was that before the Atlanta game? Middle of the season type time, maybe slightly earlier. He was on pace for like 2,000 receiving yards. He was like leading everything in receiving. He was red hot. He was getting the fade touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
It was looking impressive. So I guess like what happened with him, in my view, teams started clouding him. Teams started playing more off and just defending that, the two throws that Seattle tried on him most of the year, which was the deep in cut, or the fade, right? Occasionally a post, but like 3 vertical routes. Not much of the, as you've spoke about before, very little slants, never really running a comeback or breaking, or the deep out, like what happened to the blaze out. Not really attacking corner leverage with him effectively, and not having a plan for him being clouded and still getting him the ball, which McDonald's kind of spoke about being able to get him the ball more often. So grading Metcalf is a difficult exercise because I don't know how much, even at the start of the year as well, we're speaking about his ability to catch the tough balls. Like, he spoke about putting in off-season work, and he was making some high concentration, like jump ball type catches, and we were going, whoa, this could be development, and then it kind of, that disappeared too down the stretch. I guess C minus, C. I think C with the context of the coordinator. But like DK will be disappointed with this year for himself, and he looked disappointed at times.
And we're making that grade relative to expectations with him, right?
And they're not just expectations; they are reality, and that we've seen that with him. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be Calvin Johnson. I don't think he ever will be. I'm not doing that expectations because of his profile, his size, and his speed. No, we're doing it from what we've seen in the past usage of DK and past performance of DK.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is tough because I think this was a case of a player actually being misused, misapplied. Grubb introduced some cool things, some cool wrinkles, some fun stuff that Waldron and Shoddy even didn't do. But I think Grubb kind of lost the plot with DK, and part of that was really when refusing to do the boring stuff, refusing to punish the defenses with boring stuff as they tried to double cover him. That was something Shoddy and Waldron would be religious about. Like, oh, they're off, throw the hitch. Oh, they're pressing. Okay, now you can get the go ball going. Oh, they're clouding you, run the curl. But we just, Grubb would refuse to do that. He's just trying to like run his head against the wall with DK. And the one counter punch to that counter punch that Grubb did have was the double moves. That's great. That's cool. But that needs to be the finishing touch to the entire DK project. So Grubb did put him in bad spots. DK did have his worst season statistic, like advanced analytically speaking. Success rate, first downs per catch or first downs per touch. And then this is, I think, where DK's end of it comes in. His catch rate on target passes was like also a career low, not just a career low, but like of the top 80 target earners of receivers and tight ends, he was like bottom 10. So he might have had his worst year catching contested passes after, like you said, the encouraging first 2 or 3 weeks. Now, the knee injury is a variable. He did have a rib injury last year too, where some of his numbers started to come down a little bit.
And he was on the injury report this year with shoulder stuff. Like, I think he was pretty banged up this season.
He was pretty banged up, yeah. So I don't think he was as good against press this year, and he normally is a monster against press, and that might be where the injury. So it's tough between the OC and the injury. I really don't know how to grade him. I'm not trying to absolve him completely, but he's probably like a C plus for me. But I still think he's still the same player in 2020 that we saw. I think the rest is just circumstance, and the conditions haven't been great for him recently between having bad offensive lines and and him getting banged up, and then the coordinator issue this year in particular. So I think he could. I mean, there's nothing stopping him from having the best year of his career next year. Just things need to line up for him.
Mm-hmm. And he needs the best year of his career next year, right? Because it is a contract year, and
right.
There's going to be a lot of talk, and he won't be getting the highest offer after this past season. You know, whatever the reasons for that.
Yep. I will be right back. I have to grab my laptop charger.
What am I supposed to do with that? This guy's a shambles. Okay, let's talk about Ryan Grubb, the Seahawks offensive coordinator, who is no longer that. He got fired. Man, I don't know. We've spoke a lot about Grubb. Don't want to beat a man who when he's down, but I think the only grade you have to say is F here, right, chat? Like, I don't think I'm being too harsh there. The guy struggled in a lot of ways, and there were really exciting signs to start the season with how explosive the offense was, and we cautioned that it wouldn't be able to last, that it wasn't sustainable, and that at the same time, we are excited to see what wrinkles and evolution would come off that and the layers. And that didn't really happen, didn't take place. If anything, they tried to do more of that thing. Then there were signs of behind-the-scenes interference, like increased run rates, suddenly spamming a certain formation, suddenly doing like a load of play action to start a game, and then it felt almost like a forced concession, as Griff terms it, or he has another term for it. But
what term?
How Grubb, like forced concession, like Grubb would be intentionally like over the top and heavy-handed with things when it came to the interference into his play calling, or what we took for interference. Anyway, Griff, I gave Grubb an F. What would you give him?
I give him a D plus.
So you'd have kept him in his job?
No.
So it's an F.
I mean, D plus is not good.
Yeah, but he hasn't failed.
I mean, D plus because there are still aspects of the offense that were good. Like it's rarely ever is a guy all bad. Like even Klint Hurt did things well. Grubb did things well. It's not like he knows nothing about football. Like he did some pretty interesting things, but overall it was not good. And you needed to move on. You needed to upgrade. I mean, with him, it was always at least for most of the offense, like the tactics were fine, at times pretty intriguing, but the strategy was really bad and bad enough to completely undo whatever tactical advantages he could muster. So
it is an oversimplification to say that if the offense had been better, this team makes the playoffs, because I think actually in the games that they lost, the defense had some really worrying moments and some worrying play. But at the same time, yeah, the offense just wasn't good enough at all. And if you look at the talent, like you can point to the offensive line. As I've said, I think they're made to look far worse than they are. I still think there's weaknesses there.
He definitely made it harder on an already bad O-line.
Yeah, made it hard on everyone.
In both under center and shotgun. The play action being bad, there's like no excuse for that. Like that was some of the worst scheming I think I personally have ever seen out of under center. Not like I'm watching every offense religiously, but that was bad, man.
Yeah.
I think Grubb would tell you the same thing. He's never coached it before. So in a sense, like, of course it was bad, but.
Yeah. And really that would be, that would have been part of his argument for, staying in the job, but alas, it did not happen. Okay. That leads us to Geno Smith, Grubb's quarterback. A lot of people after this year, Griff, were revisiting priors on Geno Smith, negative priors. And there is a discussion around him, given the cap hit he carries this year, given that it will be the last year of his deal. I'm so lost with these contracts. Is it the last year of Geno's deal this next year?
Yeah, 25,
Yes.
and there's very little guarantees on it.
Right. So, points towards a restructure, the expectation, or maybe a mini extension, given he's 34, will turn 35 in the season. So, Griff, what's your grade for Geno in 2024? Because, you look at the raw stats and it looks pretty shaky, like the amount of interceptions. You look at red zone interceptions. You look at touchdowns being down. Yeah.
It's an interesting one. So for me, my grade for him is a B+. I think as quarterbacks go, he's in, I think the absolute highest you could rank him, trying to put together both an objective and subjective argument.
So you're giving him the same grade as Julian Love?
Yeah. I think the absolute highest you could go with him is like the 8th best quarterback. I think the very lowest you could go would be 12th. He's in that 8 to 12 range, and the 8 to 12 range of those 5 quarterbacks is fairly interchangeable as well. Like if you were to do a fantasy draft and you only got 1 year out of the guy and say all things equal, you're not taking into account age or cap hit because it's just one season. I think there's 7 quarterbacks I'm for sure taking over him. And then there's 4 others where I'm like, I don't really care. Give me any of those 5. And then beyond that, like, don't mention Jalen Hurts to me. Like, I'm taking Geno over guys like that pretty confidently. But guys like CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, even Trevor Lawrence, who I think is getting jobbed in Jacksonville. Like, I could totally understand someone wanted to take those guys over Geno. Like, I don't really care. That's fine. But yeah, so to go more into the season, yeah, his EPA overall in the season was 17th out of 32 quarterbacks. I don't know what his QBR was. If you look at the stats that are typically less sensitive to offensive coordinator involvement and just more a direct reflection of what the quarterback is capable of. So in that case, like take out screens, take out RPOs, take out play action. Don't get me wrong, like quarterbacks drive success there as well. But if you take out those things and you just try to isolate the pure quarterbacking, the progression, drop back passing. Geno's stats, EPA, success rate, adjusted net yards over average. I mean, he's, depending on how you filter, like he's anywhere between like 3rd and 8th in the league there. And that's with a terrible offensive line. And what impacts drop back passing the most? What has the most impact on that outside of the quarterback position? It's the O-line, even more so than your receivers. And also, it's not like your receivers are great jump ball guys. So even though they're very good, it's not like you're just vomiting the ball at the guy and it's like half field read isolation. Like, no, it's legit concept passing. So the fact that he's generating those numbers with that O-line, there's only one other guy in the league that does better than him and is even in the same vicinity as Geno in that area with an equally bad O-line, or even anything in the bottom 3rd of the league with that O-line. That's Joe Burrow. So everyone else that does well in that figure has like a top 10 offensive line: Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield. And then you're talking about the quarterbacks that are elite anyway: Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes is down because they're really lacking for talent right now. But so isolating that, like, I think he's doing quite well. The interceptions, I mean, I'm gonna keep banging the drum that I don't think he has an interception problem. I think it's mostly been bad luck. That's with regard to the excess interceptions, the turnover worthy play percentage. 2 different sites, they have him with like the 10th fewest turnover worthy plays. So I think it's mostly variance driving that. My main criticism of Geno is not finding the check down as quickly this year, and taking more sacks than he needs to. And that's him trying to push the ball and the nature of the coaching and Grubb wanting just to go bombs away all the time. I think he had a much better mindset about that last year. That's an area where he has regressed. He had
and that was troubling to me. That was troubling seeing that. And I think that's why people would push back on saying in 2024 he was a top 12 quarterback, because he wasn't. The last half of the season, I think that was a worrying trend. And then he's kind of leaving yards out there. But I also think it's so hard to evaluate a quarterback in the mess of this year. And I think Gino is still the same level of quarterback. If I had to give him a grade, I'd give him a B. And I don't think any quarterback really would look better behind what Seattle put out there, which speaks to what I think of Gino, really.
Yeah. The realistic alternatives, by all means draft someone. By all means draft someone. I'm totally for that. Draft them at any round. I don't care.
Any round? Because last year you were saying don't take them at 16.
Well, what I mean by that is if there's a guy worth taking in the first round.
Quarterbacks last year were.
Yeah. But, I mean, what is Sam Darnold doing behind this O-line? Well, what is Jared Goff doing behind this O-line?
Yeah, it's so funny, the whole Sam, like what we said about Sam Darnold literally coming to fruition, right? Like, suddenly when they're behind in a game, or they become a bit one-dimensional, or he doesn't take the check down, oh my gosh.
Right.
Look what happens. Like, he got blitzed to hell, and then he didn't take the check down, / was in a bit of bother against the very athletic Rams front, and goodness gracious. I know
Right.
Dan Chu did a great thread on Twitter of Gino's picks, and I think Dan put 8 of them on Gino. The rest were like that weird stuff. But I think we need to, it would serve people to recognize what we have in Gino still. Like, as I said, no quarterback looks better behind that situation. It was a complete catastrophe. And in a similar vein, right? Yeah, he should have, at times checked the ball down, I think, and not taken certain sacks. But like a lot of the Seahawks' big plays on offense this year were Gino improvising and making the big play. And think of the ways the offense got explosive. It was mainly that. It wasn't like strategy or design getting guys open downfield, particularly in the second half of the season, which is when the Gino stuff started cropping up more and more in terms of the taking sacks and not taking the check down.
Mm-hmm.
That's all a bit anecdotal too, and a rewatch will be painful, but I'll do it with the analysis. Anyway, that's a B for Gino, which Jen in the chat agrees with, but I know quarterback's a hot topic in Seattle.
Yeah.
And it might be a hot topic because, yeah. Anyway, Reek Woolen, Griff, another hot topic. How did you feel the corner did? Is this his third year?
Yeah. I think Reek played pretty well this year. I don't think he actually improved at his weaknesses, which would be play action and run defense. But that's because McDonald's scheme so as to take him out of that. His actual coverage ability, I mean, the guy covered his ass off all year. I mean, to me, he may never be the top 5 corner he could be, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with riding that roller coaster with him. I think he's probably somewhere in the 8 to 12, 15 range. So I don't know. I'll give Reek an A-.
An A-?
Yeah, he's a good player.
You gave Julian Love a B+, and you're giving Woolen an A- for his 2024 season.
Reek is more valuable than Julian Love.
What?
What do
Your
you think?
grading system's interesting.
Look, if what's stopping Love from being even better than he is he can't actually cover guys one on one.
I'm
He's
gonna give Woolen a B, and I
okay.
think at his peak he was an A plus. At his worst, he was a F, and that's kind of how he goes. Now, I see you raising your eyebrows, saying, "How is he an F?" Griff,
Well,
he allegedly. Actually, I'm not going to say that, but
okay,
he
all
got
right,
benched to start a game.
that's right. But you're right.
That's
You're
an
right.
F.
All right. So
You're not on the
what was
field.
his? So I guess now that I think about it, all right, you've convinced me a little bit.
No, that's okay. It's your take. That's your grade.
But
Don't
you've
let someone
convinced
tell you.
me.
Don't let another man tell you off your grade.
Why? That's showing the ability to,
No, you have to be
correct yourself.
stubborn.
You have to have a healthy balance between sticking to your guns and keeping the right amount of neuroplasticity in your brain to admit when you were wrong.
He had a couple of shaky moments. The
Rams game, Green Bay.
49ers game as well.
Yeah. But look, dude, that's when you play as much man coverage as they do and they have him follow guys even in zone, like you're gonna get beat up on a little
Yeah, of
bit.
course.
I think his advanced number again target tracking is sketchy. It's more reliable for corners because it's a little less ambiguous. But like most of the advanced metrics, cover yard or yards per cover snap,
Yeah, he's
success rate when
great.
targeted, he's way up there.
Yeah.
He didn't have a lot of zone blunders like he did last year. But again, that might be McDonald doing the heavy lifting there.
Yeah, there was less like taxing. Come to think of it, a lot of the time as you said, he's basically just locked up in man. So
I don't know,
and like what was crazy is people straight up just like, as often happens with players who are getting beat up. Yeah, he had some tough moments. Then like the Julian Love cover 2 thing, like Woolen played that pretty good. Like
he's fine.
what he did was perfectly understandable, but yet people are like, why did you let the guy go behind him and not run down the field with him?
Well, it's cloud technique. You got to. Well, so my thing with Woolen is like I accept his quirks because what he brings is so good. It's similar to like I feel like baseball fans are way better at accepting the value of a player that has flaws, and I think football fans, myself included, have a lot harder time with that. It like he's kind of like I don't know, like Pete Alonso, who he'll sock 50 home runs, he'll hit 220 and strike out 150 times a year, maybe more. But like he look at his OPS, look at his WAR, it's still up there. So like you have to just accept the good with the bad, and you're probably if you want the type of cover skills that Woolen has, those body types typically aren't good at hitting people. They're good at running around with people. They're not good at hitting people. It's rare when you get both. Darrell Rivas wasn't a great tackler. He was better than Deion Sanders. And Deion Sanders was the epitome of a guy's like, I'm not touching a ball carrier.
You know, the crazy thing with Woolen as well is if he has a career year next year, he could be the highest paid corner in the league.
Right. And then he'll be doomed to have a down year. And people go, oh no, is he having a down year? When it's probably just variance.
Right.
Because there's so many, to keep with the analogy, so many plate appearances as a man corner, you're gonna get beat up on with that many shots on goal. Like you're gonna. What's another metaphor I can use? Anyway.
Yeah. Wow. We have a very kind donation here, Griff. Carl, thank you so much. If you have a question, I think, Carl, is that a different profile picture? No, it might be the same. I don't know. The ice cream feels new, but I also feel like I've commented on ice cream. Anyway, thank you. I will buy an ice cream with that.
It was very
One
kind
whole ice cream. Thank you, Carl. Much appreciated. And Matt, thank you so much as well. Nice dog there. Lovely. Right. Here we go. The ice cream is a month or 2 old. What, like the picture or in the photo, like aged ice cream? Probably
Aged
the
ice
picture.
cream.
Can you imagine? Ooh, be nasty. Okay, the final grade, a positive, Griff. Oh no, actually there's two. Ernest Jones. Now, some people might expect an A plus grade here, given the impact on the defense. I'm going to give Ernest Jones an A minus.
Okay.
I think he played really good football. I think he seemed to be hurting, and
Yes.
there are images which would confirm that. And I think he is a really exciting player and was a really exciting player. And the unseen in terms of you can see elements of it, but you will never see the full picture. But the connection between the secondary and the linebackers, the third level and the second levels of the defense, massively improved with Ernest Jones moving to Mike linebacker or arriving as a Mike linebacker, wearing that green dot, communicating with Mike McDonald when it had been a big issue, a massive issue with Tyrell Dodson in there. And that's part of the reason they moved Dodson. The safeties were not getting on with him well. You could see that on tape. And Jones came in and everyone seemed to be happy. I think the D-line, the knock-on effects to the D-line were big too. Leonard Williams spoke of like trusting the guy behind, the impact of that. The reason it's an A- is I think the guy had some tougher plays down the stretch and he was struggling to move. He's also not as fast, and yeah, it's an A it's an A-. There you go.
For me, it was a B plus because I think
What? So you hold on. You tried to give Reek Woolen A-.
Woolen is a more important player than Ernest Jones.
Wow.
Okay, so it's a case of
What happened to you?
It's a case of we saw what the addition of Jones brought, and that makes him stand out in our mind more. Vitally important.
He was
player.
really good, Griff. Look at have you seen
He was
since
really
week
good.
9 splits?
I agree that he's a really good player, but we also haven't seen the defense for real without Woolen, and especially where they did well in the where they did well, like their third downs are elite. That's a Leonard Williams, Devin Witherspoon, and Tariq Woolen stat.
Hey, Ernest Jones would sugar that B gap. He'd mug the B gap.
Right, but they were good at third downs even before Jones came in. Did they improve? Oh. Yeah, but for me, he was a B plus just because he's a B plus kind of player. He's really good run defense. He's a really good in between the hashes. He's good hook to curl, elite spot dropper, right? He can't match guys, and he's a little suspect against play action. He doesn't have the wheels for it. When they brought him in, they did not improve against play action. They remained very bad at play action, but they improved everywhere else. Having really high competent player at Mike transformed the defense in the sense that it caused more second and medium, second and longs, which allowed them to access the best aspects of their defense, that being Leonard Williams' pass rush, Devin Witherspoon, and Tariq Woolen's coverage ability. When it's second and short, you don't get to see those things. So Jones brings more value to the defense than that of a B-plus player, but isolating he himself, for me, he's in that tier of linebackers that aren't top shelf, but he's very high end below that. So, I mean, we have high standards for linebackers. If you can't turn and run with guys 30 yards downfield, 20 yards downfield, you're not elite. You can still be a very good player.
Are we not grading them on what they've been asked to do, not what they could do or cannot do?
Well, how would you rate it? How would you grade it two down, three technique, run stuffing? Like, well, they're only asked to do.
Yeah, like 2020 Brian Monet A+ grade.
Okay. It's a good question. It's a good philosophical question.
Well, when you put
he's still asked to cover crossing routes against play action. He doesn't do it very well. So
yeah, and when a teacher when a teacher marks your paper, they are grading also what you didn't do, right? Like
I guess
there's
so.
a expectation of quality.
Yeah. So Reflect the Sun says PFF gives Jones very poor coverage grades.
Oh,
So,
Griff,
so
once again, Griff agrees with PFF's coverage grades.
PFF would tell you that he's like a bench player. No, he's way better than his PFF grade.
He had after the 49ers road game, PFF, like, I don't know what it was bad.
Yeah.
All right, now after all these shenanigans,
I love Ernest Jones.
It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like you hate it. Devin Witherspoon, Griff. Like, what's your grade on him? Just because you're saying that, like, corners are more like, what's his value here?
Well, for starters, Devin Witherspoon isn't a corner; he's a linebacker. So,
yeah, that's right. God, you're so. The 2020 like narrative around the team has broke me, and I think it broke you. I'm seeing signs of it today.
So they have him playing nickel. This man's playing linebacker, and then
he's a Sam.
He's a Sam linebacker, and then he does some coverage stuff on 3rd and long.
Yeah, that's cool.
He's
no. 3rd and long now. He's an outside backer.
Yeah. He's the Leo in the defense. No, he is an A- for me. I think he needs to cover crossing routes a little bit better.
He ended the season quite shaky, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He actually got worked a little bit toward the very, very end, but I think
again, if you play man, you're gonna get got.
Yeah. He's so good against the run. He can handle the zone match stuff really well on early downs. He's still a good cover guy. His
just like the way he drops to a curl flat in cover 3, like, oh my god. Yes.
Yeah. He's so good coming downhill. I can't believe how good of a football player he is. He's definitely going to be one of those players that moves to safety in the twilight of his career and kind of has a second wind. Because what he's doing is quasi safety stuff anyway, right? Being the nickel. They'll rotate him into deep coverage at times, and he looks really good doing it. Like when he's played an inverted like quarter deal, he looks pretty comfortable nailing down on big routes and the high cross and stuff. So I just think that there's another level of his one-on-one technique. I think more so like from reading the receiver intentions a little bit is what he needs to hone in on, because I think he guesses a little bit and he needs to try to predict more and guess less. I don't know, Matty, what do you think about that? How do you grade him?
Sorry, predict more, guess less.
Yes. Predicting is informed. Guessing is guessing.
You don't think his guessing is predicted, is informed? Like, you don't think he's predicting?
I think he seems to be a little too trigger happy with certain things, and he plays certain routes wrong. Like when he thinks he's getting like a dig route and not a crossing route, for example. He doesn't weave to keep his leverage on crossing route, which that was something he did really well at Illinois. But the way he's also, I think his eyes are getting in the back. Eyes are getting in the backfield too much, and then he loses the receiver a little bit. So occasionally when he gets a route pops on him, I don't think it's because he can't handle it physically. I think he's thinking too much. What am I? Are people saying I'm not valuing linebackers enough? Linebackers my favorite position.
No, it doesn't sound like it, chat. Sounds like Griff hates linebackers. Messed up.
So wait. Doesn't this speak to my ability to look at things objectively? That even though linebackers are my favorite sport, I can still favorite linebacker position, that I can still acknowledge that corner. That never mind.
It's okay. Right, finally, Leonard Williams.
A+.
Yeah, I'd give him an A+ as well. Not much more to say there, but we could elaborate. Like, great at everything. Should have been an All-Pro. Still crazy that he wasn't even that.
Yeah.
Was he a Pro Bowler?
No, I think he's an alternate.
What are they looking at?
I
Well,
don't
that's
know.
like fan as well, right? But
Yeah, he's got the counting stats too. Like,
that's what's crazy. Like, just sort by sacks, sort by TFLs,
because that's what all the voters do.
and
They
then
just look up pressure rate and sack rate, and
yeah, it's just it's stupid. Anyway,
yeah, I don't know.
and he got a pick 6 like against Aaron Rodgers. Like, I know he's
Right.
washed, but like, come on now.
Okay.
Okay,
Whatever. Are we done?
no, we're not. You
Yeah,
bastards.
we got to speed run this because we're talking too much.
Well, you can't speedrun this. Ben donated. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you,
If
Ben.
you were Mike
Very kind.
McDonald and you were tasked with getting this defense to a Super Bowl level defense, what do you address? Is it a scheme adjustment, a player in free agency, draft a particular player or position? Thanks. You're welcome. Now, thank you for the donation. And before you answer that, Griff, we also have a question here from Brandon saying, how much does the drafting and free agency change now that Mike McDonald is going to be available for the entire process? Last year, they were all doing playbooks, etc., and just got there. We will, of course, we have Mike McDonald comments from like 2 weeks ago where he's looking ahead. We're going to talk about them in a lot of detail, and we're going to preview the draft, the free agency, this coming off season, contract decisions, all that type of stuff. You might be able to guess where we're leaning with it. But seeing as Ben and also Brandon, but Brandon, thanks for the question, but Ben's, he's giving us $25 here. Seeing as Ben's asked that, we'll answer this as a tease for future Seattle Overload episodes. Griff, come on, how are they going to get to a Super Bowl level defense? Because I think what Ben's saying kind of is a good point in that they're not there yet. And as we said, first and second down was not as big an improvement in the second half of the season as the rest of the defense. They just had more third down opportunities to cook, and they got even better at something they were already good at. And McDonald really cooks when he's got a lead or he's in passing down situations. That's where he makes his real money. So, come on, Griff.
They need to try to become an elite early down defense that comes via improving still the spine of the defense. So Tyrese Knight's floor is way higher than I ever could have imagined, and that's on me. I got that wrong. I still don't think an elite ceiling is there, so I would try to upgrade on him, frankly, and let
I'd draft Jordan Brooks. Like if there's a Jordan Brooks in the draft, that'd be awesome.
We got to look into these guys, but Barrett Carter, the UCLA guy, Ben Casperson, actually, the person who asked this question, he was looking at him, the UCLA backer. I forgot his name, but he's really talented.
Ben's profile picture here is in UCLA blue. Well, a bit darker, but
very interesting.
Very interesting. Oh, and who coached UCLA linebackers 1 year?
Ken Norton Jr. But also,
did he coach that guy?
But Ben also made a point though that they last year anyway ran McDonald's defense via Danton Lynn. So Barrett Carter, Jihad Williams, we'll look at these guys. Lander Barton, Monjumbo mentioned. So they need an elite weak side linebacker.
Or Mike.
So to be greedy, move Jones to Will and get the elite blue chip caliber talent at Mike. And then get another safety, a third safety. I like Kobe. I think Kobe can be a guy that plays a lot, but get another safety. Hopefully a guy that's really explosive and long. And that's how you do it. And then on Mike's end of it, he needs to have more run tools on first down. You got to find different ways to move the line.
And there were signs of that. Like there were some games I was excited, like getting from under into over, or from like bare into under, or over into under, like stuff like that to like move against certain runs. Like I think we saw an increased emphasis, but I think they still need more, right? So, yeah.
Right.
So everything, Ben. They need to do all of it. A player in free agency, I'm not sure.
Well, to put this in perspective, like how far they need to go, before they traded for Jones, 2nd and 6+ plus any third down, I think they're like the 7th or 8th defense. Then early downs,
which
they're
that's
literally
clear passing down, right?
Right, clear passing downs. So, but then on balance downs, run and pass downs, second and medium short, first and 10, they're like the 31st best defense. So like terrible, right? Post Jones trade, the early downs bump up to like 16th or 17th in EPA. I think success rate, they're like 18th. So they jump from horrible to up at the median, right? They're clustered with the median. And then third downs and second and 6+ are literally like second. So it's pretty clear what they need to do. And really, if you unbucket the early downs, where do they need to improve? The run defense improves significantly. There are some hiccups, but they improve significantly there. Drop back passing improves significantly. It's play action that is still really bad. They need to figure out more. That's kind of where Knight and the lack of safety, in addition to Julian Love, kind of shows up a little bit, starts to rear its head. So that's where they need to improve. Also, I mean, again, Jones is okay against play action, but he's not elite at it. At least not against like boot play action or crossing routes. Vertically, stemming stuff, he's fine because his spot dropping is still good. And he's good at getting to the hash and knowing where the windows are. But it's when things get too lateral and horizontal where he starts to struggle a little bit. So, yeah, that would be my answer to that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think safety continuity is going to help them as well. Having Bryant and Love work together again, presumably. That would be big.
Agreed.
Right. This comment from Amy, looking forward to your take on this. Wonder if it will be as negative as most. I think Griff was very negative. We learned a lot about Griff today, but, you know, he's often negative, so.
What can I say? I'm the Grinch of Seahawks fandom.
And I leave you with this, Griff. Some
Carson
troubling
Schwessinger.
developments.
All right, Ben.
Carson Schressinger. That sounds German.
Or is it Schwessinger? Is the W pronounced like a V?
Well, it should be if he was in Germany, but he isn't anymore. It's probably like, I don't know. But Griff, troubling developments on Blue Sky.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Interesting. Something to bear in mind. All right, thank you everyone so much. We've enjoyed this a lot. I hope you have too. Please do like the video. Comment down below what you want to see from us from the off season. We're open to anything Seahawks related. Follow Griff.
Sorry though, but do we want to predict OC? Do we want to do the draft really quick?
Why are we doing it? No.
We have to. We have to just settle who won the prediction.
We'll do it next week. Because we're thinking the Lions will win, okay? Yes. Okay. So next week, Seahawks OC draft. This will settle once and for all. Who knows what they're talking about on this show? One of us has to. Who is the true ball knower of Seattle Overload? Yeah. Follow Griff at CMike Spin Move. Follow me at Matty F Brown. Follow the pod at Seattle Overload. We appreciate you all. Ben, thank you for the donation. Carl, thank you for the donation. And Matt, thank you for the donation. Very kind of you. I'm going to spend it on whiskey. Griff?
What? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Just,
are
usually...
You ready? Are you ready for some affirmations?
I'm so ready.
I am responsible for my own happiness and well-being, and I prioritize my self-care. I am confident.
Oh, and this is me back again. I just meant to say thank you, Steve Ferrone, for another donation. I forgot to mention that, but Steve commented on our previous video, I think, with a donation. So thank you, Steve. Hope you're still watching. If not, my apologies. Goodbye.